Welcome to the Spicy Take Sports Podcast. I'm Elijah. With me, I have Colton. He wasn't able to make it to the NFL. And how you doing, man?
Good. It was just a very long night from the Georgia game. I couldn't wake up in time. I didn't have much of a voice, so I wasn't really going to be much of use on our last podcast. So,
especially with them absolutely slaughtering South Carolina. But
oh yeah, the game wasn't even close. But
that was a slaughter.
It was nice, them actually winning. And last time in our Athens, they lost South Carolina. But
Were you at that
you know
game?
how it goes. Yeah, I was at both games. Yeah,
That's much better feeling now for you. But
much better. That's why I was like, I need to go to this game because I want to get that taste out of my mouth for sure.
mhm. So we are actually doing our first baseball edition of this podcast, and Freddie's got my approval right now behind me. But
It just looks like you're throwing your hands up and you're like
yeah, exactly.
you're Freddie's body and not his.
Mhm.
He's like it's your head on his body. It looks there you go. There's Freddie.
Hi, Frederick.
This looks
But
Frederick. This looks hilarious.
so we're just gonna go ahead and, with the baseball season coming to the most exciting part of it, with the playoffs 2 weeks away and a ton of pennant races still up for grabs. I think it's gonna be a really fun time. I'm still at the moment where most years I've been in football season by this point. I mean, I still have been watching football. I mean, obviously we've been doing podcasts about it. I've always been watching it, but part of me still is in baseball season, looking forward to the postseason because postseason baseball is hard to beat. But we decided we're going to go ahead and have a little quick podcast regarding some of this baseball stuff. And well, let's get into it. I mean, obviously the most important thing is the playoff predictions right now. We got a ton of pennant races. The NL East is within 3 games. The NL West is within a game. You have the most of the AL divisions are pretty much wrapped up, but then both wild cards in the NL and the AL are both really great races right now. So,
and it's incredible because I mean, in the NL West, you have the Dodgers and the Giants who have pretty much the 2 best records in the entire NL. So
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's just tough to be in that division. I mean, San Diego's. We'll get into them later. I talked about them a little bit ago, but I mean, them just going 2-8 in their last 10 games, coming down to the wire, that really pretty much cost them their entire season.
I mean, San Diego's been really weird. We'll get to San Diego a little bit later on, but they've been really weird when it comes to late in the season. But so I'll let you break it down first, Colton. Who do you think is going to win each division? And where do you think the wild cards are going to go? We'll start in the NL with the East. We'll kind of choose the division.
NL East, I mean, right now the Braves are up, I think about 2-0, and then the Phillies are struggling with the Orioles, which is great to see. But I mean, I would say just with the way I think the rest of the season is going to go, as you and I have talked about, the Braves have about a 2-3 game lead going into that final series against Philly that should wrap it up. So I think Atlanta, they're bats, and I think obviously having Max Fried as your ace is looking pretty nice. But I mean, I think Atlanta's going to be able to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think.
And then
I think the same. I think that Atlanta does end up winning the NL East. Obviously, we're a little bit biased with being Braves fans, but we also are very realistic in the fact that we were both thinking the season was over once Ronald went down.
Because at the time,
was that? Oh yeah. I mean, once Ronald went down, I mean, we both thought the season was over. I mean, at the time, he was the whole offense, and defensively, he's still the best. He was like one of the best right fielders in the league. So, I mean, him going down was huge. I mean, he's probably top 5 player in the league. I think you could make that argument, at the worst top 10. And when he went down, I think most Braves fans, especially knowing that we were 3rd in the division at the time, would get a few games back from the lead. I think most Braves fans thought the season was over. Everyone was already mad throughout all of Twitter, Instagram, Reddit. All of them were just so mad about how the team was going to begin with. I mean, so seeing what Brian Snitker's done with the team, he's had some questionable decisions in the bullpen a lot this year, but considering all
Will
that he's
Smith.
went, considering all he's went through this year as a manager, it's been very, very impressive what he's done. Obviously Philadelphia got really, really hot last week, but right now they are currently struggling, tied 1-1 with the Orioles. They lost last night to the Orioles. Philadelphia is a weird team in that I could see Philadelphia getting super hot and winning the division, but also I could see them falling apart and literally losing the division by 7 or 8 games because it's just they have just as good of a likelihood as beating the Giants at the Dodgers any given game as they do losing to the Diamondbacks of the Orioles, which is a really weird thing. I mean, it's like they play down to their competition all the time and play up or play down to their competition because roster wise, they have a playoff roster, but
Yeah.
execution wise, I feel like it's very tough. I mean, because if you look Braves versus Phillies roster without Ronald, I'm pretty sure that most people would say it's pretty dead even. I mean, rotation, you got really 3 reliable guys in Atlanta's rotation at this point, and then Ian, who's kind of up and down. You got Morton, Fried, and Enoa, who are pretty solid most of the time, and you got in the Phillies bullpen, you got a Cy Young candidate and Zach Wheeler. Kyle Gibson's playing pretty well, and then you have Eflin when he's healthy, but he's not been healthy lately. And then you have Nola, obviously, but you got 4 really good pitchers in the Phillies rotation, but bullpen is both their team struggles. But I really do think that's going to be where you see Atlanta kind of take that edge and get that division wrapped up. Because even though neither bullpen's very good, you have guys in Atlanta's bullpen like Tyler Matzik, Luke Jackson, that are extremely reliable. And if they give up 1 run, that's all they'll give up. And most of the time they go in and get scoreless innings. I mean, you got Will Smith in Atlanta's bullpen, who's been very, very inconsistent to be nice to him. But you also, I mean, the whole Phillies bullpen's been really awful all year. So it'll be a fun race, but I think the Braves do get it done. And I think, as you said, if Atlanta goes into that Phillies series with a 2 or 3 game lead, I think the season is pretty much wrapped up because I think they get at least 1 there. And you're expecting, and that it would lead the Phillies are expecting them to lose 2 of 4 against the Rockies and the Mets. So, I mean, because they have that Rockies game to make up. And then the Phillies have to win out, which I just don't see that happening. The best chance for the Phillies to catch up is if Atlanta lost 1 against Arizona, and then they lost a couple against San Diego. But I think that Atlanta will win 3 against San Diego and will sweep the Diamondbacks, and we'll put the division pretty much out of reach.
I think we have the potential to honestly sweep the Mets. I mean, I think the Mets are they pretty much just falling apart. Like, they're just really inconsistent this season.
I mean, they're only 6 back. I mean, I know 6 back at this point in the season is pretty big, but I mean, with 3 games against the Braves, I mean, the Mets are not completely out of it. They're currently getting their butts kicked by the Red Sox, but I mean, the Mets are just, I mean, they were literally in the division all year, and then it hit. It's like midway. It's like once the trade deadline hit, they just completely fell off a cliff.
And I feel like it's when the Braves started playing their best baseball. I mean, this
Braves and the
may
Phillies
sound like a crazy spicy take and insane to say, but maybe the best thing for the Braves moving forward was rallying. I think after Acuna got hurt, because once he got hurt, everyone kind of looked at each other like, okay, what are we going to do now? And then AA came in. He brought Jorge Soler in. He brought Adam Duvall back, which congrats, Duvall just hit his 38th homer last night at 483 we talked about.
Yeah,
absolute missile. Good gosh, that ball looked like
Rosario who hit the cycle.
Yeah, then Rosario hit a cycle. I mean, and then Rich Rod in the bullpen's been, I would say, he's been solid. I mean, he hasn't been amazing, but he's had some really good moments. Lately, he needs to, kind of pick it up a little bit. But granted, I mean, AA really had some awesome acquisitions. We're giving away Alex Jackson and
Pablo Sandoval and
Bryce. I mean, bravo.
Yeah, exactly. So and now the NL Central, it's kind of, I mean, Milwaukee's already locked the division up, but I just have a few things to say about Milwaukee. I mean, Milwaukee, they have the 3rd best record in the NL. I would argue, based on how they've played since they got Willy Adames to the roster, because before they got Willie Adames, they were around the 500 mark. And once they got Willie Adames, who was absolutely raking since he got to Milwaukee. I mean, Willie Adames specifically said that once he got, when he was in Tampa, he literally could not see the ball on the ground because of the way the stadium was. The Trop is a very, very awful stadium and a very awful location. I mean,
weird indoor.
It's a really weird area. And it's a weird stadium, but he said he literally could not see the ball. And once he gets to Milwaukee, the guy starts to rake, he starts to field better, and the Brewers just got hot. But my reason I wanted to talk about the Brewers so much, pitching in Major League Baseball wins you championships. You can have the best bats in the league, but if your pitching doesn't hold up, it does not matter. And you look at Milwaukee's pitching staff when you have Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta, who are all having, in most years, all three of those guys have been the top 4 in the Cy Young voting. This year, you still have Scherzer and Buehler in LA, which we'll get to LA in a little bit. But I mean, those three right there. Corbin Burns is having a dominant year to the point where earlier in the year he literally hadn't walked a guy for the first month of the season as a starter. And then Woodruff's been lights out for the last 3-4 years. And then Peralta's had just gotten hot. And then even after them, they've got Eric Lauer, who's a solid starting pitcher. They don't have any weak spots in that rotation. The bullpen's pretty good. And that offense has gotten so much better. I mean, Yelich hasn't had a great year, and they're still hitting well. Imagine if Yelich gets back to his MVP form with this team. Milwaukee could be scary.
Very scary.
They could be very scary.
I mean, that would really be scary. I mean, obviously, like you said, that if their best is third best, I can't speak here either. That third best record in the NL. I mean, they've been consistent all season. I mean, obviously, that's easy to look at it and say that, but I mean, I feel like you don't really hear a ton about Milwaukee, but they're producing. I mean, obviously, a lot of people love to talk about the Dodgers and the Giants and the Braves, and I mean, every other team under the sun. I feel like they just kind of slid under the radar, and here they are, third best record in the league. And I mean, Yelich can, in my opinion, pretty much flip a switch. I think they'll be all right going to the playoffs. And I don't know. I mean, I think the Cardinals are just a team to watch. We'll talk about them a little later, but I mean,
wild cards
to have them. Yeah, I mean, they're up right now on they're beating the Brewers 2-0.
They've literally just kept on winning lately. It's pretty nuts. So speaking of those Dodgers and Giants that you said people want to talk about, let's start talking about them. So that NL West race is nuts. One game separating them between the two best records in the entire league. It really sucks for either one of those two teams that one of them are not going to get that one of them are going to have to play in a one-game wild card playoff. But who do you think is going to end up winning? Who do you think is going to end up holding off the division? Who do you think is going to end up having to play the wild card game?
So going down the stretch, I mean, I really believe.
If we look at the schedule, San Francisco has 3 at San Diego, 3 at Colorado, 3 at home against Arizona, and then 3 at home against San Diego. And then the Dodgers
play the Rockies.
They have 3 at Colorado, 3 at Arizona, 3 at home against San Diego, and 3 at home against Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think I can see the Dodgers definitely claiming the division. I mean, I know the Padres aren't. They've slipped a little recently, but I think they'll give the Giants fits, and I think they can kind of open up that division. I mean, it's one game, obviously. If they win and then the Giants lose, they'll really be tied. But I mean, either team's going to be dangerous. Both teams. I just would rather play the Giants personally as a Braves fan than play the Dodgers. Just PTSD from last season. But I don't know. I feel like the Dodgers are that team where obviously they're just kind of like I said Yelich earlier. They can flip a switch because they have so much dang talent. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I have a feeling the Dodgers are going to claim the division.
I think the Dodgers do too. I think both schedules are about equal. I mean, Colorado is very, very good at home all the time. Like their record at home versus away is it doesn't even seem like it's a real record. At home, they're like one of the best teams in the league, and on the road, they're one of the worst. It's really a weird situation with them. That's what Coors Field does, I guess. But I mean, it's just very awkward that that's what they really are. It's really weird that's the situation. And both teams have to go to Colorado at the end of the year. I think that Arizona, I mean, both teams get Arizona as well. The only difference is the Giants get the Padres again, and the Dodgers get the Brewers. And usually I'd say the Giants have the advantage in that situation, but I wouldn't really go there at this point. The real main reason is because Milwaukee's not going to get the 1 seed. I think they're 6 games back of the 1 seed. I just don't see them making that up in 2 weeks. And the thing is, the Padres are still going to be fighting for that last wild card, and the Dodgers are still going to be fighting to win the division. So that last series against Milwaukee, I could easily see Milwaukee playing some bullpen games instead of putting one of their top guys in the rotation out so they can make sure they're ready for the playoffs. Because you don't want to use up your good bullpen, your good arms in your rotation. If you're literally going to be in the same spot no matter what, start resting some guys and getting them healthy for the playoffs. So I think that could lead where the Dodgers actually end up sweeping the Brewers in that last series, which I think could put them over. But all in all, we'll get to the wild card right now. Whether it's San Francisco or the Dodgers, one of those teams in the wild card is quite unfair. I feel so bad for the other team, for the team that ends up in the wild card, because a 1-game playoff, anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, right now it'd be the Dodgers and the Cardinals, and Cardinals are probably one of the teams I wouldn't want to play either. So I think they can realistically beat the Dodgers in 1 game.
I mean, I agree. I really agree. I mean, the Cardinals are getting Jack Flaherty back, and they said Friday is when they're expecting him to be back. And the Cardinals are doing all this without Jack Flaherty, one of the best pitchers in the league. They get him back, and once he came back but when he came back from injury the first time is when they got pretty hot. Now him coming back again when they're already hot. If you tell me I can put Jack Flaherty on the mound, I don't care how good your offense is, you have a good chance to win that game. I know that the Dodgers are probably rolling out Max Scherzer, which is disgusting. Yeah. But that wild card would be fantastic. I really do have a prediction, though. I think that if the Dodgers end up as the wild card, I think they do beat St. Louis. I think if the Giants end up in the wild card, not because I don't think the Giants are as good of a team as the Dodgers. I think in a 7-game series, I actually would probably take the Giants to beat the Dodgers. I know it's kind of crazy because the Dodgers have so much talent, but I think the Giants are just a really good overall team. But if we're talking about in a 1-game playoff, do I think that the Dodgers or the Giants have a better chance to beat the Cardinals? I would say the Dodgers. And the main reason is because I trust Max Scherzer on the mound if I'm a Dodgers fan more than I trust Kevin Gausman on the mound if I'm a Giants fan. Gausman's has been great this year, but when you're talking about he's had 2 good seasons in his career versus Jack Flaherty's been great his whole career. Max Scherzer is a Hall of Fame pitcher. Like,
definitely.
Who you'd rather have out there on the mound and who you think has a better chance to actually win in a 1-game playoff? What do you think?
For me, I have a good feeling that, if I'm a Cardinals fan, like you said, I'm hoping for the Giants to kind of drop a few games. And it's funny because I was looking at the standings. I was like, before you even said it, I was thinking of the Brewers, and I was like, well, they're likely going to rest their players because they already have, like you said, they're 10.5 games out. They already won their division. So with that said, I mean, why would you play them and risk an injury to some of your stars? Like you said, that's going to give the Dodgers open window. So likely will probably be the Giants, and right into the second Cardinals. I can see the Cardinals beating the Dodgers, but I would probably almost favor the Cardinals over the Giants in a 1-game series just because I think they're that hot right now. Like you said, I'd probably take the Giants in this 5-7-game series. I don't know. I'm just really high on St. Louis. They've done stuff before where they go wild card and then go to the World Series. So It's going to be interesting how that goes. I don't know. It's just October baseball is just super exciting.
It is. I will say I will ask a question. Do you think that any team can catch the Cardinals right now in that wild card? Right now, you have Cincinnati 3.5 back, San Diego 4 back, Philadelphia 4.5 back. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much what you got to. Is there any of these teams that you actually think will catch them, or do you think that St. Louis has pretty much got it wrapped up with that 3.5 game lead?
I mean, I think St. Louis pretty much has it wrapped up for the most part. I mean, Cincinnati is a pretty solid squad, and I mean they didn't they have the wild card
For a while,
pretty
yeah,
much.
but they got
Yeah, they
cold.
had it for the most part. I mean, but today they just lost to the Pirates, who are almost 40 games under 500. And you can't do that whenever you're trying to fight for a playoff spot. I mean, for the rest of the season, they do have a 3-game series with Pittsburgh. Granted, they play Pittsburgh tomorrow, and then they have Washington. So they have Washington, the White Sox, and then the Pirates. So they can very well do that. They can very well bounce back. I wouldn't be shocked if Cincinnati did. But St. Louis, I mean, their schedule is probably not much wider. I mean, they have Chicago, Milwaukee, and then the Cubs, Milwaukee, and Cubs. So,
I mean, you got 7. That's my thing. I would like to say that I think that a team can catch them, but truly, I don't see it happening. I know that. By the way, Ozzy obviously hit a 2-run bomb, 4-0 Braves.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, but like I would like to see Milwaukee. Like I would like to see the Cardinals play Milwaukee to get some previews of what they could look like if they played in the playoffs again. I mean, with division rivals and all. Those games are definitely tough. 6 games against Milwaukee. But I don't expect them to lose all those games, and they're going to at least win half of those because I think St. Louis is that hot. And the Cubs are like the most sorry team in the league. Like you see the Cubs on your schedule, and you just expect them to literally lose every single time because they're just that bad at this point. And they have 7 against the Cubs. So pretty much what teams would have to hope for is that the Cubs shock the Cardinals and win a couple of games, and the Reds get hot. The worst thing that happened with the Reds is that they didn't end up getting one of those games at home. No, they didn't have a series against the Cardinals at the end of the year. If they had a series against the Cardinals at the end of the year, I could see them making a run at it. But the Cardinals pretty much are in a situation, if they just handle their own business, they're going to win. They're going to win the wild card.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, also the Reds have 4 games against the Pirates and 4 games against the Nationals. So I mean, they are also set up.
The way the Reds have been playing lately, though, I mean, the Pirates are not a good team, and the Nationals are not a good team, but they're a little sneaky. You're not going to just sneak over wins easy on them. I would never pick them to beat the Reds, but the way baseball is, I don't expect the Reds to sweep either one of those teams just because
I mean, also, I'm looking right now at the last 5 games they played against Pittsburgh. They've lost 3 of the last 5. Cincinnati had. So,
yeah, I mean,
that's not good when
that rotation's let them down.
Chasing a pennant. I mean, that's just not acceptable. You're a wild card position. You're frozen.
You're frozen. No, you're good.
No.
Now let's move on to the AL. AL East is pretty much wrapped up at this point by Tampa. Technically, Boston has a chance still, but that division is tightly contested for that 2nd, 3rd, and 4th spots. Well, I mean, and we'll get to that when we get to the wild card, but you were mentioning earlier about Tampa. Tampa has been very impressive this year. I think a lot of people were writing them off after them trading Blake Snell and kind of losing some guys from their team that was in the World Series last year. But I mean, people are kind of forgetting Blake Snell was not super great last year or the year before. I mean, he had a better year last year than the year before, but I think people were really looking at how he played in the World Series more than they did throughout the whole entire season, and thinking it was going to be a bigger deal. I mean, Tyler Glasnow has to get Tommy John, and they literally just kept being as good as they were without Glasnow, I think is a testament to how good the Rays organization is. It's really unfortunate that they don't have many fans because of how the stadium's set up and everything. But that organization is one of the most well-run organizations in all of Major League sports, not just baseball.
Yeah, that's really. Aren't they about an hour south? Aren't they in St. Pete, not Tampa?
Yeah, they're in St. Pete, and it's kind of a thing where people are saying, move the stadium to Tampa, please, because it's just dumb that it's not in there. But
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like, I mean, obviously, you got to experience two glorious games in Truist Park, but I mean, it's about 20 miles right north of the city. So I mean, which is a lot nicer than an hour away. So
And it's like a 7-lane road, not a 2-lane road like St. Peter's.
exactly, it's an interstate, not a 2-lane road. Yeah, I mean, getting Tampa a little later, Roy, that's my surprise thing, to be honest. But we can talk about that a little later. Yeah, I mean, and then you have the AL Central. I mean, the White Sox have been producing all season long and have just been chugging along really without missing much of a beat. I mean, they've kind of. I mean, I know Cleveland is a little down. They've come on down a little recently.
That whole division.
I mean, Minnesota.
That whole division kind of was. It never lit. I mean, there's a lot of people that were hyped up on Minnesota. I mean, they've come off 2 straight, almost 100-win years, and
Yeah,
then they go out and crap the bed like they did this year. Cleveland, they continued their rebuild pretty much after trading Lindor, and then they just kind of. I mean, they ended up trading Rosario for Pablo Sandoval and cutting Pablo Sandoval. I mean, they were not trying to win all year. Detroit's looked very good for a team that was expected to be really, really bad. The fact that they're almost 500 is very impressive from that young team. But even with that, I mean, that being said, Chicago is just kind of by far the best team in that division. I mean, they've got very good bats. They've got an excellent pitching staff. That bullpen is nasty with Kimbrel and Hendricks, both at they literally alternate as closers. It's a nasty team. I mean,
forgot that Kimbrel went to Chicago. I was trying to remember where he went.
He went across. He went from Chicago to Chicago. So,
yeah, Chicago.
And then the AL West, Houston's pretty much got that division wrapped up. It's been very impressive what Houston's done. First full year back since the bang bang. But it's been very impressive what they've done. I mean, you see what they're looking like, and they show that they don't need the bang bang to be great.
Is that your reference to the whole
trash can? Yeah,
trash can situation. Yeah. Do you think? I mean, side note, do you think they'll ever look into that more and take away the World Series, or do you think they're just?
No, I think at this point, if they would have been really, really bad this year, I could have easily seen them maybe looking back into it, see how big of a deal it actually was. But the fact they've been so good this year, I mean, I think it proves that there wasn't that it. I mean, it definitely was scummy and it was messed up, and it was good that they punished them. But I mean, I'm not going to put too much stock into that anymore. I think that it's just a really, really unfortunate thing that they did that. But I think that you're not going to see them lose their World Series ring or anything.
I think you should definitely have an asterisk next to it in the
record books. I think in
court they definitely cheated.
Yeah, I think in the court of public opinion, it's pretty much already there as well. Kind of like with Barry Bonds, they didn't take away his home run title or anything, but you know exactly what that is.
But everyone knows,
Well, let's get into the AL wild card. This is a fun race. You've literally got the top wild card team a game up on the second wild card team, who's only a half a game up on the third wild card team. And you've got another team 2.5 and 3.5 back of the wild card. You've legit got 5 teams fighting for 2 spots. And 3 of those teams are from the AL East. But so if you had to pick the 2 teams of those 5 that you think are going to end up making it in, who would you say?
I mean, right now I'd probably go Yankees and Red Sox. I mean, the Yankees just, watching them at Truist Park, how, they're kind of starting to click again. I mean, they've won 6 of their last 10, which is amazing. I mean, they were slumping quite a bit earlier on in the season. I mean, and then the Red Sox have just been, they're 20 games in 500. That's really consistent all season long with 74 home run differential. Don't get me wrong, Toronto is also a really good team. I mean, they have a AL potential MVP, but I just think that Boston and New York, are going to finish the job down the stretch just because they've been there more often than Toronto has. What about you? What do you think?
I think Boston's going to get in. Main reason is actually because of schedule. I don't think they're that much better of a team than any of those other teams. If you look at the schedules, Boston they have a 3-game series against the Yankees coming up. It's very that's probably the most important series all year. That, and I mean, I guess Phillies, Braves in a little bit as well. Those series will come down to be some of the most important series all year. But after that 3-game stretch against the Yankees, they end their season out with three at Baltimore and 3 at Washington. Those should be 5 or 6 wins for Boston, and I think that should be enough to get them into the last wild card at least, no matter what happens with that Yankee series. So I think it really comes down to, I would love to see Seattle in the playoffs. I would. I think that's a great story of how young that team is and how they've kind of come together and started to ball this year. Same with Oakland. It's always kind of cool to see Oakland be good when they don't pay anybody anything. But that being, I still don't think that either one of those two teams can make up the 2.5, 3.5 game deficit when you have 3 teams in the AL East all fighting for it. I think it comes down to, do I think Toronto or New York is going to be able to pull off that last wild card? And I do think Toronto gets it done. New York's got a hectic schedule coming up. They got 1 more against Texas tomorrow night, but then they have 3 at Boston, 3 at Toronto, and 3 at home against Tampa. Like, none of those.
They could possibly lose 2 out of 3 in almost all those series. I mean, that's how good those teams are.
I will say that if you're the Yankees, this is what you probably want. I think because if you want to make up games in a series in a wild card chase, the best way to do it is to play the teams you're facing. Because if you beat those teams, you not just gain a half a game, you gain a full game. And so they have 3 against Boston, 3 against Toronto, 3 against Tampa. They do not want to play Tampa. Tampa's had their number all year. Toronto and Boston have the home field advantage. Obviously, in baseball, it's not as big of a deal as in a lot of other sports, but it still makes a difference in the play. At this point, this point is not technically playoff baseball, but it's virtually playoff baseball at this point. Once you get close to the month of October, you're going to start seeing some insane crowds, especially in series like Boston and New York. That's going to be sold out at Fenway every single game, especially with how much is on the line. And I just see Toronto getting it done because I just look at their schedule and it's just, I mean, they have the 3 against New York, but they have 4 against Minnesota, 3 against Baltimore. Like, they have 1 more against Tampa, but they beat Tampa today. It's just like, they have, both Boston and Toronto have the games to try to build themselves up and get some spots in that race, while New York has to beat these teams head to head to get a spot in the race. So you can look at it either way. I think Toronto pulls it off. I don't think the Yankees win 2 or 3 against all these series. So they win 2 or 3 in all these series, they make the playoffs. But if they don't, then it could be rough.
Yeah, I can see it definitely going either way. I mean, we'll see what happens.
I mean, it's always fun to look.
Oh, it's so much fun.
By the way, the Orioles just took a 2-1 lead on the Phillies going to the bottom of the 10th. And the Diamondbacks just got a run, so it's 4-1 Braves and then 2-1 Orioles. And then the Red Sox are up 6-3 on the Mets, but the Mets are down to their last 2 outs.
So with the Mets are, in my opinion, the Mets are done. I don't think they're going to be able to catch Atlanta or Philadelphia. They're probably 6-9 back, and then Braves win 7.
I mean, the Mets virtually have to win out to get back in this, and I don't think they're going to be in it. Philadelphia, if they want to win the NL East, we kind of talked about it. They got to win these games that they're supposed to win. And if they don't get a guy home from second and extras, then they just lost back-to-back to the Orioles, and you can't do that in a division race that's this tight. You just can't. Well, so let's go ahead and get to our second topic. We're going to talk about MVP picks and the Cy Youngs as well. I mean, I think the AL, when it comes to the MVP pick, is just kind of obvious. You got 2 guys between Vladdy and Shohei. I mean, I think we both kind of agree on who we think it should be. First off, I want to say that Vlad Guerrero Jr. is having a absolutely fantastic year. All the hype he had as a prospect, he's come to fruition this year. So I think he deserves.
In my opinion, he's having the year that Acuna would have had if Acuna didn't get hurt.
I think it would be close. I just
maybe even better.
I think he's having a better year than Acuna would have. I mean, because
even better potentially.
He's leading the league in homers. I'm pretty sure he's leading the league in RBIs and batting average as well. I mean, just double check. He's leading the league in batting average, and he's tied for the lead in home runs. And then in RBIs, he is 5th. The guy's really close to having a triple crown. The fact that the triple crown is going to get you 2nd place more than likely is kind of just ridiculous. But yeah, Shohei Ohtani's the MVP. I mean, I personally hate giving MVPs to losing teams like the Angels are. But if you have a guy that's going out there and slugging as many homers as Shohei is while also pitching at an elite rate, it's just something we've never seen before.
Yeah. I mean, he's playing out of his mind, and I'm just, I don't know. I would just have to go with Ohtani, but I mean, the stud from Toronto, he's fun to watch. I mean, really, these young stars are making baseball fun again, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'll say this: if Vlad was in the NL, he would be the runaway pick for the NL MVP, but he's just not. So that was kind of the easy conversation. Now it comes to the NL MVP. The NL MVP has been a very weird race. You've got guys that there's been a lot of injuries for a lot of the main candidates. And then you got other guys that kind of started out the season a little bit slumping and they got hot. I mean, I'll go ahead and give my top 5 candidates now. And then I'll also give who I thought if they would have stayed healthy all year would be in the top 3. I'll start with the top 3 that I thought if they would have stayed healthy. I think that if they would have stayed healthy, I think that Tatis would have won MVP. He was having an amazing year. I think Acuna would have finished 2nd, and I think it would have been a very close race for those two. And then DeGrom, with his season he was pitching before he got hurt, was ridiculous. Those 3 were by far the best 2 players in the NL until they all went down. Now I would probably still give it. Actually, I think I would probably give the MVP right now to Brandon Crawford in San Francisco. For a guy that everyone was kind of writing off as his career's kind of over, and like he's washed up and all this stuff, for him to go out and literally put a season that has led the Giants to the best record in the league at shortstop and somehow playing some of the best defense at shortstop in the league, and he's 34 years old. It's just really impressive, because I think I'd probably have him as my top MVP pick right now. 2nd, I would have Tatis, just because his numbers are fantastic, but his Padres are falling apart. That's why I don't have him as number 1. I have Max Muncy as my number 3. Max Muncy is the most underrated Dodger, in my opinion. The guy just absolutely mashes, and I feel like he doesn't ever get the credit that he deserves for mashing as much as he does.
Yeah.
I think my number 4 would be probably Will Smith, the catcher from the Dodgers. I mean, the guy's hitting like 300 on the year at catcher and hitting nukes, but no one ever talks about him either. There's a lot of guys on that Dodgers team that no one ever talks about because they have so much talent on that roster. And then my number 5 would probably be Austin Riley. I think that just his jump that he's made this year from being a guy that Braves fans wanted out of Atlanta to out of nowhere hitting 300 and hitting 30 bombs. I mean, that's quite impressive. So I think I'd probably hit him number 5.
At one point, he was statistically, I think since All-Star break, he was a top 2, top 3 third baseman in the whole NL, if not the league. And shout out to Young Dick. He just hit his first 30 season home run. Yeah, his first season with 30 home runs in it. Officially, it was tonight or last night?
Tonight. He just hit it this morning.
Today,
in the first inning.
Yeah, probably as we started the podcast when he hit that shot to left field. But for me, I think, like you said, there's a lot of injuries going down, and if it wasn't for, I think Tatis didn't go down. He was going to win the MVP, and then Acuna 2nd, and like I said, DeGrom 3rd. I agree with that exactly. but I mean, just someone who's been healthy a good majority of the season. I mean, doesn't have the most standout team out there, a good team. But I mean, not a runaway World Series favorite or anything, but someone that kind of hate to admit as a Braves fan, but Bryce Harper, I think right now has the most first place votes in the whole group in MVP. I mean, second place, even though he's hurt. I mean, Tatis. I mean, he's that good of a player and makes that much impact. And most valuable player. I mean, obviously, is the title of the trophy you receive. But I mean, literally to his team, he is almost that not entire offense, but he's a very good chunk. And then I mean, third. I mean, I know they're kind of slumping. I mean, they're not really good at all. But he's the only good player on that team. Is Juan Soto. Just watching him in person, just the player that he is. I mean, he's not going to win it, obviously, in my opinion, but he's just one of those people that, if the Nationals are good right now, I think he'd probably win it. That's just kind of like
his season's been the most underrated, insane season in the league because he's just putting up numbers that are insane. And yeah, I like your Harper pick. I like your Harper pick. The only reason I didn't have him in my top 5 is because he's been so streaky this year, and the fact that when the Phillies start winning, he is on fire. But when he goes cold, that Phillies team falls apart. So I guess it would be the most valuable player. But if he gets hot at the end of the year, I could see him winning it. If he can lead the Phillies to win that NL East, I see him winning it. I just don't see him winning it if he doesn't win the NL East. I know that baseball's weird and that you don't really have. I know I'm saying Shohei's going to win the AL MVP on a team that's under 500, but I think it's just a different situation where you have a bunch of guys that are very close versus Shohei's just doing stuff that we've never seen before.
Yeah, he's just doing stuff that people said Babe Ruth did back, over 100 years ago now. So, I mean, to pitch that well and to hit that well is just something that in our lifetime may not happen that often or hardly ever. Literally DH and pitcher, that's absolutely nutty. It's borderline ridiculous how well of a player he is. He's just
ridiculous. But it's nuts. Now
our next topic.
When it comes to Cy Young, in the NL, I got to go Corbin Burns in Milwaukee. The guy is just having a heck of a year. Him and Max Scherzer are my top 2, and I'd probably go Burns because my thing is you see a lot. I think the voters especially don't like to give a guy the award a lot because it's just kind of voter fatigue. And Scherzer's won so many Cy Youngs at this point. I don't think they really want to give it to him if they have another guy that's close. So I'd probably give it to Burns in the NL, and in the AL. The AL's pitching has not been as good this year as it usually is. So I'd probably give it to Garrett Cole because he has been lights out this year. I had some worries about him when the whole sticky substance thing got implemented. And he struggled a little bit to start, but he kind of showed what he was once he kind of got used to not using it anymore and just started dominating again. So I'd probably give it to Garrett Cole, but NL is definitely a better race than the AL is this year in the Cy Young.
Yeah, I actually do think Matt Scherzer will win it again. I mean, I know you said that, he's won X amount of times, but I mean, the man's had a almost dead even on a 2 ERA. I mean, that's very impressive. I mean, I know he put Nationals, but now playing on the Dodgers, it's probably makes his life a little easier that he can kind of
completely off topic. Yeah, Phillies just walked it off. So
very serious.
Yeah, they just gotta win, but it's fine.
It's fine. It's cool. Life's great.
It's whatever.
Cool. It is what it's Braves should win.
I mean, as long as the Braves keep winning, then they're gonna still be up 3 games. But so now we kind of talked about this. We kind of pointed this a little bit. But you said who's your AL pick?
My AL pick is you already call it for me. I was gonna say Garrett Cole is my AL pick from the Yankees. I mean, right now he's 3rd in the AL the Cy Young projection, but I mean he's had a good year. I mean, he has 231 strikeouts. That's ridiculous. Really, the most strikeouts or second the most still by only a few in the entire AL.
Robbie Ray's having a good year too, and I'm assuming he's probably number 1 right now on the list in Toronto. But
this is actually William Hendricks. William Hendricks is actually number 1 in the AL.
They have I could not give a reliever the Cy Young over a guy that pitches however many innings. I get the reasoning, but I mean, right now Liam Hendricks is a rotational closer with Kimbrel. So I just can't give it to him, but I see where they're coming from.
I mean, I get it, but the production is there when he's in the game, but when he's not, I mean, he's
one
not in
inning
it
a
as
game.
often, obviously. So
I mean, one inning a game.
one inning.
Do. I mean, so now we kind of pointed out this a little bit earlier. So the disappointing teams that we're running into, there's been surprises and disappointments this year. Who do you think who's your disappointing team this year? Like maybe your top 2 disappointing teams this year that you would say.
Well, I'm gonna do my first, and then you do your first, and then we'll go back and forth.
Okay.
How's that sound? Perfect. All right. So my number 1 most disappointing team is actually the Minnesota Twins. I mean, I know, granted they've lost a bit here and there, but I just didn't really think their team they made the playoffs the last 3-4 years in a row now.
Yeah.
To just fall off that quickly, to go 20 games under 500. I mean, I know COVID was a weird year last year, but I mean, most teams that are in all the playoff races are back. And Minnesota is probably one of the only teams that aren't making the playoffs from last year. I mean, am I wrong? I feel like they're going to be
pretty accurate.
I mean, yeah. I mean, for them to be 19 and a half back is almost embarrassing. Like, it's really almost a laughing stock from that far back. So that's my number 1 disappointing start the season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Minnesota has been one of those teams that I don't think anyone really expected a World Series out of them, because once they got to the playoffs, they've struggled the last couple of years. But I think that they're one of those teams that people thought was going to be a solid middling second place, maybe win their division but probably finish second to the White Sox, but definitely be a wild card possibility. And for them to fall off like they did, I mean, they have talent all over that roster. So for them to fall off like they did, it's not acceptable. I mean, I like Rocco Baldelli as a manager, but he needs to be gone at this point. When you have this kind of bad year, when you're expected to make the playoffs, I really do think you probably lose your roster lose your team at that point. And I think that's probably why you end up losing. I think that's why they probably end up just leaving. I think that's why they're so bad.
I mean, like you said, they were, projected to be a wild card team more than likely. And if they were close, if they didn't make it by a couple of games, 2 or 3 games, maybe they missed a wild card, but to be 20 back, that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're,
I think my opinion. I think my next most disappointing team, we need to just make sure not to repeat any, because there's definitely 4 disappointing teams this year.
Oh yeah.
I got to go to the Padres. I know the Padres are still in the running for a wild card technically, but they have just completely and totally crapped the bed the second half of the season. You went from having a roster that, I mean, earlier in the year, we were all saying that if you're in any other division other than the NL West in the NL, you have to win your division because you're not getting another wild card, because the Dodgers, Giants, and the Padres, two of those teams are going to be the wild card teams. And then the Padres, if you look at how they've finished this season, I mean, right now they're obviously 2-8 in their last 10. But if you look at how they finished their season, they have, I mean, in August they were bad. In July they were bad as well. I mean, when you have July and August and you're just bad, and then you have other teams finally coming into their own, you're not going to hold on to that lead. And the thing is, there's too much talent on that Padres roster. I will say a lot of it's because of injuries. I mean, to the pitching staff, especially when you lose Darvish, Snell, and then Clevenger's already out because of Tommy John recovery. I mean, you obviously have some injuries that have affected that. But that being said, you still need to be able to hold on to a wild card, especially when none of the records for the wild cards are really that crazy. I mean, right now the Cardinals have it at 80 and 69. If the Padres would have kept playing like they were playing, they would easily have 90 wins by now. But they just didn't, and they completely fell off. So I'd probably say the Padres are my most disappointing team besides Minnesota.
Minnesota, well, I guess my second team is kind of a little more so my disappointment for the second half of the season. I mean, first half they played really well, but overall as a season, I mean, I know they made the playoffs last year and they got bounced by the Braves in the first round. I mean, the Cincinnati Reds, I mean, they were playing so well for such a good majority of the season. And I don't know, within the last month and a half, like they just, like I said earlier, they've lost 3 of the last 5 against Pirates. So you can't do that going into basically this is playoff baseball. And I mean, they basically collapsed, and they've been super disappointing the last several months just because they've been very consistent. They had the wild card lock for it seemed like months at least, first couple months in the season.
Yeah, I mean, once the Padres fell out of that wild card spot, Cincinnati looked like they had it under their grasp pretty easily. And I mean, St. Louis, when Cincinnati had control of that wild card, St. Louis was a good 9 games back of that wild card. And now to see that Cincinnati's 3.5 back of St. Louis, and 2.5 back of St. Louis, 3.5, yeah, 3.5 back of St. Louis. Like that's just that's a collapse. I mean, that's very disappointing as well. I agree. My next team, this is a little bit controversial that I'm saying this team is considered disappointing because they have been really ravaged by injuries this year. I feel like it's a thing that we've been saying every year for the last 10 years. The Los Angeles Angels are a disappointment of a franchise right now. I understand Mike Trout got hurt. I get that. But when he got hurt, they weren't saying it was a season-long injury. They held him out the rest of the year because there's no point in playing him because they're already out of the race. I'm sorry, you have the 2 best players in baseball. You have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani on that roster. And you're telling me you can't put a better record than 72 and 78? I know that I know that Trout's been hurt. I get that. But they have other guys on that roster and that offense that are very, very good. But that pitching staff is so bad. Like the Angels can put up 10 runs and still lose the game because that's just how bad the offense, the defense, like the pitching is. And defensively, they're not a great team either, but that pitching is just so bad. And I know that Mike Trout just signed that huge extension, but I was really kind of rooting for him to go somewhere else before he signed that extension. Because this is getting embarrassing because the Angels have a ton of money. I mean, here's the thing. I get that Anthony Rendon's a really good player. But the fact that you stop going as hard after Garrett Cole when he's an LA boy, you stop going as hard after him and sign Rendon with that same money. I'm not saying that he would have went to New York, but third base wasn't your issue if you're the Angels. Pitching's your issue. So you lose out on a guy like a Garrett Cole, or even you could have went out and got a different pitcher. But instead, you give Anthony Rendon this huge contract, and he's not lived up to it. And your pitching's still garbage. But
yeah, I mean, the Angels have really for the last 4 or 5 years now. I feel like you could say that Mike Trout has been the best player in the AL at least, and they have nothing to show for. I mean, I know it's
top 10 player of all time already, and he doesn't have any. He has 1 playoff game he's put in, like
1 playoff game, and then you have, like we talked about, a couple minutes ago, one of the most exciting players we've seen probably our lifetime in Shohei Ohtani, and literally you are 6 games.
It's ridiculous.
You gotta figure something out because those 2 guys are basically generational talents. You're really just gonna waste them. So they gotta figure something out for sure. That's embarrassing.
I think that one other team, we aren't really going to go into it too much. One other team that's very disappointing. I'm not surprised that they've been disappointing, but they have been disappointing is the Mets. But I was saying it from the beginning of the year when they were winning the division that they were going to fall off. I mean, I could have told you that. Not because the roster isn't loaded with talent, which they always do. But
yeah, I mean, I remember you calling it in the beginning of the year when you were saying that the Mets and the Phillies better get ahead of the Braves now. I have a chance because I mean Atlanta was coming for them. So I mean that's what happened. Atlanta's top of the Solaire's hit a shot by the way for Atlanta.
Yeah, I saw that 5-1 now. Now let's get on a better note. Let's talk about the more surprising teams. I can start these. We'll do 2 of each again. I think the number 1 one's very obvious. I mean, the San Francisco Giants. This team was projected to win 81 wins this year, and they're at 97 with 15 games to go. Because it's just that roster is what shows if you have a group of veterans that know what they're doing, and you have a lot of guys that you can rotate based on the pitcher. If you have a bunch of lefties pitching, and you have a bunch of good righty bats come up against them, then you're going to hit better. If you have a bunch of righties pitching, you have a good amount of lefty bats, you're going to hit better. And Gabe Kapler was the manager of the Phillies 2 years ago, and they fired him because he was not living up to expectations. And this year, he absolutely destroys it in San Francisco. It just shows what happens when you give a manager the ability to manage instead of giving him a few stars and seeing if he can win it with a few stars, but not a full-on roster.
Yeah, my number one most surprising team is the the AL champion. Tampa Bay last year. I just the whole COVID season, I thought it was more of a fluke for them to make it that far. They had a good team. They lost a few pieces here and there, but I just didn't think they're gonna make it as deep as a run as they have potential to make again. They're like number one in the AL East that has the Red Sox, Yankees, Jays. So definitely arguably one of the best divisions in baseball, and they are right now 6 games in the lead for the division. And 93 games, 93 wins. They're a really solid team, and they'll probably be here for a while. It's pretty medium. I would say they're like more of a small market team. Tampa's probably more small than anything. Probably small to medium-ish if they had more fan attendance. Being from obviously both from Florida, but being in Florida, I just feel like growing up there was more Braves fans in Tampa. In that area, I don't know anyone that's really a Rays fan, and they're really good. So that's kind of an issue there. But who's your second most surprising team?
Second most surprising team. They aren't going to probably make the playoffs, but I'm just so impressed with how they played. I kind of mentioned them earlier. The Seattle Mariners. This team has been a bottom dweller the last few years, and they just had so many good performances from young prospects that have come up and made their presence known. Logan Gilbert as a pitcher is having a heck of a year as a rookie, or second year, but he didn't have many years. This is definitely his first year of being on the scene. You have Kelenic, who came up and was expected to be a superstar, didn't play great to start. He's starting to play better. But you have guys like Mitch Haniger that's been very underrated for a few years, finally getting his recognition and finally getting some wins. Kyle Seager the same way. His brother's definitely more known than he is, but Kyle's been a stud for the last 10 years, but no one's really talked about him. Seattle, it's just a really good story seeing them like this. They're only 3.5 back. Technically, they could still make the playoffs. And I'm be honest, I'm completely pulling for them. I would love for them to make it over Toronto or New York. I really would. I don't expect them to, but just the team is really a good example of sticking with the process, but because they haven't lost and they've been able to continue their rebuild and keep and trade some good players for prospects and still somehow end up with a better team and they still end up having a really good team while also keeping that rebuild going. Seattle will be nasty in a couple of years if Kelenic and Julio Rodriguez reach their potential. Seattle could be the team to pass Houston in that division in a couple of years.
Yeah, Seattle is one team that's not necessarily, in the playoffs often. So it is exciting to see a team like that potentially have a chance to at least make it to the wild card. For me, my second most excited team is the Oakland A's. Last year they made it to the NLDS. They lost 3-1 in a 5-game series to the Astros. But they're just one team I don't really expect a ton from this season. And they're 14 games above 500. And they are
2.5 back.
2.5 back. Yeah, I was reading the wrong thing. They're 2.5 back. So if they slip, not just that the Yankees slip, they have a good opportunity to sneak in. The Mariners and Athletics are definitely not out of it. 2.5, 3.5 is not too hard to overcome. You can only overcome that in a couple of days.
Yeah.
The Yankees decide to start falling off.
Yankees and the only thing is you have to have the Yankees and the Blue Jays fall off, which is kind of tough to see. But I could see it happening though. I hope for myself that I see the Mariners in there. I don't think they will, but I'm really hoping for it. The A's and the Mariners have been a very surprising thing. I think most people thought Houston was going to run away with the division, which they did pretty much run away with the division. But I think people thought it was going to be because Houston was playing in a really, really bad division. But Oakland and Seattle have definitely been very impressive teams this year.
And right now, the Mariners are up 4-2 on the Athletics in the bottom of the fourth. So, I mean, that's a very crucial game for these two squads.
Very much so. All right. So, last thing we're going to talk about today, it's been a really good conversation to kind of get some predictions in. Should anything change or should things stay the same? If you had to pick one team that is kind of not expected to do much in the playoffs, well, let's do two teams. One team that is expected to, that people are saying is really, really good, but you probably aren't really expected to win the World Series. And then one team that is kind of expected to do not really much at all that you think can make some noise in the playoffs.
So one team that can potentially win it and one team that can just do a little damage.
Yeah, that they aren't expected really to.
Yeah. So this may be a little bit of spicy take. I think one team that's like my main Cinderella that I think can, if they get hot and they get the right matchups, I think the Braves are a team that isn't real. They're not really supposed to win anything. I mean, I think we can make the NLCS again. I mean, if they get the right matchups, they could have a chance to get to the World Series. Not likely, and not really anyone's going to pick them. I mean, the Braves have in my opinion, one of the best offenses right now. I mean, that'd be biased potentially. But I mean, look what they've done since Acuna got hurt. I mean, they will have so many guys that are just raking completely.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like they're my number one Cinderella team right now, who I think can seriously make a really good push for the World Series if they, get all the right hits that go the correct way. So we'll see what happens. What's your number one Cinderella team?
My team, I think, should make some noise. I'll kind of answer both of them here. The team I think is making noise that isn't really expected to do much. I could see Toronto actually going in and winning the wild card game and upsetting Tampa. I could see that happening. Not because I don't think Tampa is good, but just because Toronto has so much talent on that roster that if they all get hot, no one can keep up with them offensively. The team I don't think they really will make a World Series because I think they're too young and inexperienced to do so. But I think that you could definitely see them make a run for the ALCS and then probably fall there. The team I think that is a World Series contending team that people aren't really talking about as much. Kind of mentioned of how much I liked them earlier. Milwaukee is just really, really good. That pitching wins championships. And with that kind of pitching, I think Milwaukee matches up extremely well against both the Giants and the Dodgers. I think Atlanta honestly would probably be one of their tougher challenges because Atlanta's offense has hit the Brewers pretty well this year. They split right down the middle this year in the season series, and a couple of those are actually when the Braves were playing really bad baseball. So, I mean, I think Atlanta definitely would be a tougher challenge for them than they would probably like. I think they definitely would rather face the Phillies. But that being said, I think that Milwaukee, I would love to say I think the Braves could beat Milwaukee. I think they could. I don't think they will. And I think that Milwaukee probably wins against Atlanta, goes to the World Series by beating the Dodgers or the Giants. And then I probably see them. I actually think they win it all. I do. I just think that they have a weird team about that something's weird about that team. And they're kind of going under the radar, but they are just extremely solid across the board. And I think they can beat any of those teams in the AL. I think the AL is kind of weak this year. I truly do. I know that the wild cards raises really good teams. I just think the AL is a little bit weak in the fact that I think a lot of these teams have good records because the rest of the AL is pretty crap. I mean, the worst teams in the NL are the Nationals, the Marlins. You have Pittsburgh and Arizona. But I mean, other than Pittsburgh and Arizona, you don't have anyone under 64 wins. Whereas the NL, you have a 48, a 55. Well, technically the same way. But either way, same difference, I guess, I just don't think that the AL is as deep as people were saying it is. And I think any team in the NL could honestly put a run up for their money against the AL teams. I just feel like it.
Yeah.
That's why I think Milwaukee is. I think Milwaukee's my World Series pick. Obviously, we'll know more once the matchups come out, but I just think that's my surprise. That's my super surprise team to win the World Series.
That's your spicy take.
Yeah.
I think, we talked about it earlier. One team that I think can do a little bit of damage. I don't really project them to even get really touch the World Series, but I think the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals can, in a wild card game. I think they can get the right bats together way and get really good outing pitching wise to just put a game together to knock. I think they can knock out the Giants more so than the Dodgers. I really think they're just one of those teams that they just in October they flip the switch.
And that's what happened in September. So if they keep this up, St. Louis could be that team kind of like the Nationals a couple of years ago that just got hot and just couldn't be beaten. But
I mean, they've won the last 10 games in a row. The Cardinals.
My only worry with St. Louis is I worry about the depth of their rotation. I mean, they've got Flaherty, and then right now Adam Wainwright for some reason has got to hit the fountain of youth the last month and is pitching out of his mind. But I just don't see that rotation being good enough to win too many playoff games. I think they could. I think they have a good shot to beat the Giants in the wild card game, and I even think they have a shot to beat the Dodgers in a wild card game. But
yeah.
I can see them winning that one game thing. I even see them win the NLDS as well in a 5-game series because you throw out Flaherty, you throw out Wainwright, and you throw out like a Happ or a Lester to try to get something. I mean, Lester is really good in the playoffs. He's not been good in the regular season, but he's really good in the playoffs. I mean, so I can see them win the NLDS. I just don't see them winning an NLCS, but I can see them making a run at the NLCS though. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I can definitely see them, like I said, doing some damage, 10 in a row, but they could be that Washington team, but I just don't really see it happening this season.
Yeah,
I think the NL is just too deep.
Yeah, I think the NL is just so deep this year. I mean, I think there's a lot of really, really good teams in the NL this year. I think the records that they have are that a lot of the NL teams have are a little bit skewed because of how deep the league is. I mean, even the bad teams are never really pushovers. Like you aren't having very many games where we're having blowouts in the NL. I mean, like your Marlins, your Nationals, even though they're not very good teams, they are giving a good fight. I mean, versus the AL, I'm sorry, Baltimore doesn't give very many good fights. I mean, they've given a couple to the Phillies, but so be it.
Yeah, I saw this the other day. There's been rumors coming out that Oakland may move their stadium out of California. I mean, their team out of California, or at least out of the city of Oakland.
Yeah, they're saying Las Vegas.
Vegas is what they're thinking.
Yeah. I'll just say this: the city of Oakland needs to realize what sports teams do. They've already lost the Raiders. They already lost the Warriors, and you're going to lose the A's. Like, this is just really sad if you're the city of Oakland about what you're doing right now. You got too much. That's too good of a location for a sports town to lose 3 major sports franchises in 2 years. Like, it's just really sad.
Yeah, and especially the Raiders too. I mean, the Raiders are one of those teams that are just it's exciting when they're good.
It's like it still feels weird to call the Raiders the Vegas Raiders, but
yeah, I just call them the Raiders. It's weird to say Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas, but
yeah. I was trying to remember where they were talking about because I knew it was another city out west somewhere, but I mean, I guess
it was Vegas. They were mentioning Vegas, and they were mentioning somewhere in Canada, but Canada has a really good baseball market. I mean, Toronto is a great baseball town. I mean, if you went to Montreal to be like the Expos again, then it'd be flipping awesome. But either way,
yeah, I was gonna say Montreal. I mean, they had a pretty good base there.
Yeah, they were.
So I mean,
it was just the team was garbage at the end of it. But
yeah, exactly. I mean,
but the Nationals were so bad when they first got to Washington. But
yeah, I mean, they just had like one good year, and other that is still mediocre. But anywho.
Yeah, but
I mean, we'll have our projections coming out next season. The last game is the 3rd.
October 4th, actually, is the Braves have the game against the Rockies. Hopefully that game doesn't really matter that much as a Braves fan. Hopefully the division's already wrapped up. But
hopefully they just rest some guys.
Yeah, hopefully it's just a game that we can just rest a guy and be good. But obviously, playoff baseball is coming down. Be a great series, gonna be a great season to end it out, and I'm excited. We'll have our playoff predictions the day the season ends. We'll hop on and do some playoff predictions, and then tune in for the video that should be posting on Thursday or Friday for NFL and our college football college football previews for this week and then reviews from the last week. We'll have some really good conversations there, and we're excited to get that out so we can get some good interaction with it.
Yeah, I'm super excited for our next couple of podcasts, our football podcasts, and we'll probably start and do some more baseball. See what our baseball towards the end, and we'll probably branch out a little bit and do a couple other sports here and there.
I know Caleb and his buddy Brant. Brant's wanting to be on here as well so he may be on one of the next on the next podcast. We'll kind of wait and see for that. So
yeah, I mean, we'll start really having guests probably almost every podcast.
Yep.
Starting soon. I mean, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, I know several people that are interested too. So it's just a fun thing to do. I mean,
also last thing for everyone that's watching, if you all want to support us, obviously subscribe, like the video, get us on the algorithm a little bit. Plus we are on Apple Podcasts now. So if you all want to go into Apple Podcasts, if you have Apple Music or whatever and download it, will help us out a ton to get us out there and try to get some more people to listen to get some more spicy takes out there.
I love spicy takes.
I do too. Well, we'll see you next time.